Fighting evil by moonlight, winning love by daylight, never running from a real fight. She is the one named Sailor Moon. If you're not familiar with the series, Sailor Moon is an anime and manga about a young woman named Usagi Tsukino who is tasked with saving the Earth from the forces of darkness as the magical girl Sailor Moon. She's tasked with gathering and awakening the other Sailor Guardians imbued with the powers of the planets. She eventually comes to learn that she's the reincarnation of the Princess of the Moon Kingdom, and her Sailor Guardians are also reincarnations of her warriors. Together, the girls come together to fight different villains of escalating danger for the sake of a happy ending they were unable to have in their previous lives. This was arguably the first anime I ever watched as a kid. I think it probably shares that title with Cardcaptor Sakura. I have many fond memories of visiting my grandparents after school got out and sitting on their living room floor and watching the afternoon block of Toonami until it was time to go home. Of course, I also watched it at home, but for some reason I remember it more vividly at my grandparents' house. It was definitely a formative series for me back then. My favorite character growing up was Ami because she was bookish and I related to that. She was also blue, which happened to be my favorite color. I remember being so blown away that a girl was allowed to be the blue one. Usually in hero teams, blue always went to one of the boys. I'm showing my age here, but my favorite character in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers? Kimberly. You know, the pink one. Power Rangers Time Force? Also the Pink Ranger. My favorite Ninja Turtle was Leonardo. My favorite Sonic character was, well, Sonic. I barely ever remember Sakura wearing blue when she was collecting cards. I wouldn't see another girl in the blue hero role until Power Rangers Ninja Storm. Quite honestly, it made me feel a little better about loving the color blue growing up because every other girl around me loved pink. I felt like I was different, somehow, just because I didn't care for pink that much. Every time I saw a Sailor Moon toy in Toys R Us, I'd ask if I could get it. Ironically, I never got any Ami toys. I had one of the mini Usagi dolls, I had the regular sized Chibiusa, but I could never find Amis on the shelf. I also had the talking Luna P toy that I still don't know where it is to this day. Somewhere with my missing Kiro beanbag, I assume. In addition to seeing a character like me, Sailor Moon also showed me that girls could be the hero too. That they didn't have to be damsels in distress waiting for the guy to save the day. I know it's a meme at this point, but it's honestly kind of refreshing that all Tuxedo Mask really does is show up, throw a rose, and leave. I felt like I finally had a fictional role model I could see myself in. I would make my own tiaras out of paper and tape and use my Clow cards and staff as my weapons as I jumped around on the couch pretending that I was a Sailor Guardian too. Only when I was sure no one was watching, though. I was a very shy kid and I didn't want to be teased for it because my older sister would never let me hear the end of it. When Hotaru was introduced, she became my favorite character. As one might be able to tell by this character design, the color scheme was heavily inspired by Hotaru. This, I think, would probably start my trend toward characters with darker vibes, since my favorite Teen Titan is, predictably, Raven. I still loved Ami, of course, but Hotaru somehow took the #1 spot. Of course, as I got older and the afternoon Toonami block slowly went away, I moved on. I started watching other anime and reading manga, but I wouldn't say I ever really forgot about Sailor Moon though. It always remained in the back of my mind to an extent, but it did fade from my point of view. I wouldn't revisit it until much later when I'd read through the manga finally. I'd also pick up Sailor V, as Minako would come to be a character I really liked. I could relate to her ditzy, goofy nature, but I also admired her ability to be serious and get down to business when the time called for it. Though I think that can be said for any of the Guardians. I like to think that her personality influenced me in some ways. I was already goofy around friends, and I'm more than a little spacey. Undiagnosed ADHD, anyone? I can only hope to be as reliable as her one day. But on the subject of the characters that influenced me, there was another one that had a more subtle influence on me. Haruka was my first exposure to gender fluidity. As a child, I don't think I quite understood it, and it may have also been a product of growing up with the infamous Haruka and Michiru are really just close cousins dub. But I remember thinking it was really cool how Haruka could be both masculine in civilian form, but feminine as a guardian. This became especially apparent as I read the manga and discovered the panel where someone says that Haruka possesses both traits. I think it was Michiru. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But I think that stuck with me more than I realized. Now, of course, word of God, Haruka is a woman because only women can be Sailor Senshi. But I don't think that discredits the headcanons of others. Yes, Haruka can absolutely be a butch lesbian, but she can also be gender fluid. She can still identify as a woman, but also something else. However someone relates to Haruka's character doesn't make them wrong. We all have our own interpretations. I did encounter more gender non-conforming characters as I got older, some of them even becoming favorites like Saber and Enkidu from the Fate series, or Boogie Pop. For some reason, they really resonated with me, and frankly, I never really stopped to think about why that was. These were characters that I would later understand gave me gender envy. I really liked the idea of presenting in an ambiguous way. But of course, at the time, I thought nothing of it. I hated wearing dresses and skirts as a kid, preferring to wear shorts and pants that I could run around in. I didn't start wearing them until after high school, where I found a style of fashion I liked in mori-kei and cottagecore styles. I thought that I must be a girl because I did love presenting in a more feminine way, and I liked how those outfits made me feel. And then I got metaphorically punched in the face by a character in another series, but I'm going to credit Haruka with planting the seed in my subconscious. It was a wake-up call. I didn't have to be just a girl. I could still have my feminine outfits, but I could also present in a more ambiguous way. I realized I wasn't completely tied to the label of being female. So in a roundabout way, Haruka helped me realize I was non-binary by showing me that it was a thing, that it was possible to be feminine but also masculine if I wanted to present that way on any given day. In fact, many of my go-to outfits when I'm feeling lazy are baggy, loose-fitting clothes like streetwear. And I think this is why Haruka became one of my favorite characters as I got older. Even if I didn't understand why I was so drawn to the idea of that character until more recently. Haruka is, I think, my ideal gender presentation, and that influence can also be seen in the character design for this channel. While Hotaru definitely inspired the color scheme and the theming, Haruka ended up inspiring the initial design. That was the thought process at least, though I think in the end with the color scheme I went with and the design elements I chose from Haruka, it maybe reads a little more on the Mamoru side, which, honestly, not even mad about it. It works. Even today, the overall aesthetic of the anime has persisted. There's something about those pastel backgrounds or the shots of the city at night. It's something that I don't think Sailor Moon Crystal has been able to replicate. There's arguments to be made about the pink tint on the old footage that's become such part of the aesthetic, but I think even the restored footage has the same charm. I think for me, a lot of the appeal comes down to those hand-painted backgrounds and effects. I'm sure a part of it is also nostalgia from growing up with it, but I genuinely prefer the look of the original anime compared to Crystal. It just feels too bright, too clean. While it is closer to the manga, it just doesn't have the same visual appeal to me. Each version has its own pros and cons, of course. The art style for the manga and the original anime both feel so iconic now, and each tells the story in their own way. One common criticism I see of Crystal in particular is that the cast doesn't seem to have as much character or personality to them, that the original anime seemed to flesh everyone out more. In the original anime, we get to spend more time with the cast, so perhaps that's why everyone feels unique. From what I remember, Crystal does seem to rush through things, but it's also been a while since I read the manga all the way through, so I can't really comment there. Now, there are definitely some weird things with the series, both in the anime and the manga. The anime, both the dub and the original Japanese, made Mamoru older than Usagi for some reason, which caused a whole host of misunderstandings within the fandom. In the manga, they're much closer in age. He's a high schooler, not a college student. And I'm still a little uncomfortable with Chibiusa's interest in Mamoru just because that's her father. I know there's the whole Freud thing, but I think we all agree that's just plain weird. I've never once wanted to take my dad away from my mom. So each time I see that part of the story, it always weirds me out. This might also be a hot take, but I think that Seiya should have been in love with Kakyu instead because I'm a sucker for that kind of bodyguard and princess dynamic. And I've never been a fan of the whole other character coming in, being in love with one of the main characters who's already in a relationship for the sake of drama and heartache. I think I'm in the minority here though, because I know Seiya and Usagi is a very popular ship in the fandom. I've just never personally been able to get behind it, but to each their own. We've all got our preferences for ships. For me, there's just something about Mamoru and Usagi, the idea of a love that's so powerful it transcends lifetimes that I really love. I think it's the same reason I like Inuyasha and Kagome so much, even with all the drama that comes with that, but that's a whole other video. That said, I'm sure there's probably more issues I have with this series, but nothing else comes to mind right now. Regardless, I will always think of Sailor Moon fondly for the profound impact it's had on my life, both in the past and who I am today. I still collect merch when I can. I have a pen that looks like Minako's transformation pen and a keychain that looks like Ami's. I have a Chibiusa Q-Pass kit, and I came incredibly close to buying a Hotaru figure, but it was during a time I was trying to save money, so I had to leave it behind. And I'm kicking myself for it now because it's going for so much more money online, as with most Sailor Moon merch. I think about a quote I've often seen floating around from Naoko Takeuchi about how when she was going through a hard time, she created the Sailor Guardians as girls she would want to be friends with. I hope she knows just how many lives she's touched and changed for the better, and I want to thank her for giving me characters that I could look up to as a child, and even inspire me as an adult. One thing that I think makes Sailor Moon timeless is this fact, that there's always going to be a character that someone can relate to, someone the audience can see themselves in, or even the kind of person they want to be. But it's also not just that. Sailor Moon is a series that doesn't dumb things down for its viewers or readers. The tone, while initially pretty lighthearted for the most part, eventually shifts. We start to get more drama and higher stakes with each new arc. Sailor Moon didn't shy away from the fact that there was very real danger for the Guardians. I feel like the popular sentiment online is that Madoka Magica was the first dark magical girl series. And while it definitely is dark, don't get me wrong, I don't think we're giving Sailor Moon enough credit here. People tend to forget that Sailor Moon isn't all upbeat sunshine and rainbows and city pop aesthetic. Those girls are dying almost constantly towards the end of the series. In many cases, Usagi is the only one left standing. And while she's able to bring back her friends, it's still a very traumatizing event for her each time. In one of the movies, Usagi herself even briefly dies before she's revived by Mamoru and the Millennium Crystal. Despite the fact that we know in the end things will turn out alright eventually, it's still heart-wrenching every time watching this cycle of events, and many of us watched this as kids. I still vividly remember being glued to the TV, cheering for Usagi to make it through, even though I knew in the end she would prevail and revive everyone. But it still kept me on the edge of my seat. Even aimed at children, Sailor Moon didn't treat its audiences any less because we were kids. I think that's the biggest reason why it stood the test of time and become one of the classic quintessential series that we think of when anime gets brought up. It's just as much for kids as it is for people of all ages, and I think people will continue to cherish it for many more generations. It has and will continue to be one of my biggest inspirations when it comes to writing characters, from friend group dynamics to romance, alongside other powerhouses like Ghibli, which I will definitely talk about more in the future. While I do wish that Naoko Takeuchi had continued to make other manga, I think it's perfectly fine to leave Sailor Moon as her lasting legacy. Quite frankly, there are very few magical girl series that I genuinely enjoy, and Sailor Moon has the honor of being number one. Cardcaptor, Sakura, and Madoka being among the others. While Takeuchi-san no longer makes manga, she is still working in the field assisting her husband with Hunter x Hunter, which is another very beloved series, but one I honestly haven't gotten around to yet. But those are my thoughts. What are some of your favorite memories of Sailor Moon? Who's your favorite character? Hell, what's your favorite meme from the series? Mine has to be either the Christmas parade where Tuxedo Mask shows up as Santa, or the famous "My work here is done, but you didn't do anything" meme. Let me know your thoughts down below, whether you agree or disagree, or even if you've had a similar journey with the series. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching this video and listening to me yap about one of my favorite anime. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. I talk about anime, manga, video games, and maybe even a book or two here while making art in an effort to gradually improve my skills by holding myself accountable to actually draw more often. Shout out to the YouTube channel Spilled Ink for making me get off my butt to do so. If you also like paranormal stuff, I have a second channel called Between the Pines where I share stories of the weird and spooky. And now, we can get a look at the final result. And here is the final result. As you can see, I went back in and added some effects, some sparkles, some shoujo bubbles, and of course, rose petals. The line art is a little messy, but on the whole, I think this turned out really well, and I'm pretty pleased with it. I based this on a screenshot I took in Infinity Nikki before the game shot itself in the foot, back when we had that event where you could go to the ruins of the castle and the full moon would be out, and I thought, wow, that makes me think of Sailor Moon. And so when I decided to do this channel, I knew that this had to be my first video, and this had to be the picture that I drew first. And again, I think that we're our own harshest critics when it comes to art, and I think that this channel will be good in teaching me to let go of that perfectionism a little bit. It doesn't have to look perfect, it just needs to look nice. And if I'm happy with it, that's what matters in the end.